On today's episode, we detail how Will Howard, quarterback for Ohio State, can improve his 2025 NFL draft stock by outdueling Dillon Gabriel and the Oregon Ducks. Plus, we talk about the prospects that you need to be paying attention to. That and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. You know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at TheTalentCode. You talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, and the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listen is greatly appreciated here. DP, college football playoff. We're going through Ohio State versus Oregon. We're doing our classic thing, man. We're bringing down the offensive prospects to watch, the defensive prospects to watch, and then getting into those X factor prospects who will determine the wins and losses in this game. Ohio State versus Oregon. DP, let's start with these offensive guys.
You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Keith, when I look at this game, Ohio State versus Oregon, part 2, because remember they had a kind of a shootout, on the road or in Oregon early in the season, like week 7. To me, it's Will Howard is one of the guys to watch. In a quarterback class where Carson Beck is going to be coming back from a UCL, kind of similar to that Tommy John surgery that Brock Purdy had about a year or so ago to that elbow. We don't know exactly how soon he'll be fully healthy at 100% strength. And there was a quote from Todd McShay saying that this was a bad decision to declare for the NFL draft after the season he's had. And then, of course, not being able to play in the college football playoffs. That QB3 spot is still open. Like, it's still a wide open race right now behind Shador and Cam Ward. Now look at Will Howard in that first matchup, Keith, against Oregon. Even though they lost that game, he was 27-34, about almost 79.5% completion percentage, over 320 yards passing. He had 2 passing touchdowns. I believe he had a rushing touchdown in this game as well. And what we saw from him against Tennessee, he looked good, right? You know what I mean? Yeah, he had a rushing touchdown in that game as well. It's just a defense couldn't get any stops for Ohio State. I think in this game, if the defense are able to do their job, Will Howard has to make plays to help out that offense. He has all the weapons and tools to get it done. Now, can you outscore a Dillon Gabriel?
I like that, DP, and I was at that game, that Oregon-Ohio State game during the season, and just how the game ended, right? Like, it has to be something that's sitting in Will Howard's mind. Last second scramble, didn't get down early enough, and the clock runs out as he's sliding, scrambling to put his team in position. So I think you look at it, and Ohio State feels like they have every opportunity to win this game. I look at running back, and I'm not 100% sure if he declared or not. I think he's coming out, TreVeyon Henderson, right? I don't think he said that he's going back to Ohio State. So I look at TreVeyon Henderson. TreVeyon Henderson he was the more effective running back that evening, right, when they played Ohio State, and he was able to show the explosiveness. He seems like the guy that's kind of hitting his stride, and he had 10 rushes for 87 yards, right, along of 53. Like that's what they need. They need explosive runs. They need to be able to bring an extra safety in the box for Oregon to kind of open up this passing attack when you talk about Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, and those guys. So I look at TreVeyon Henderson as a running back that can help kind of sway things one way or the other. Then the other matchup I'm looking for, offensive play I'm looking at, would be interior offensive lineman Donovan Jackson, right? A lot has been talked about and made on the opposing side of Rick Harmon, right? The Oregon defensive tackle. Be able to corral that guy, right? Be able to handle him up front, be able to do some things. We know that they have the young, he'll probably be a 2026 draft prospect, DJ Ugalele's brother, Matayo Uiagalelei, like be able to corral those guys, move them off the line of scrimmage, win the line of scrimmage, be dominant in the same facet that y'all were against Tennessee.
Yeah, I think for them, like that front line's gonna be big, right? You talk about Trevion Henderson being successful, him or Quinshawn, you got to be able to create some run lanes. And that run game, it looked good, and then Josh Simmons got hurt, and it was like things just kind of didn't go their way after that. But Keith, I'll stick with Ohio State real quick. Emeka Egbuka, like we saw that in that first matchup, Oregon put their best corner on Jeremiah Smith. Jabbar Muhammad. They kind of looked, they had a safety over the top. They wanted to take away the big explosive plays from Jeremiah Smith. And what did I say going into that Tennessee game? That's fine. If Oregon wants to do that again, Will Howard, Chip Kelly need to, we got to get Emeka Egbuka the ball early. No matter if it's a quick pass, quick little bubble screen, slant routes, drag routes, whatever, get him the football so he can make plays early in the down and keep you ahead of the chains. He's that type of player. And then if you leave him one-on-one and he gets matched up on a lesser corner than a Jabbar Muhammad, you take that matchup. One-on-one, him on a crossing route with his route running, his quickness and different things like that, his savviness as a route runner and knowing how to get to his spots and get open. Yeah, if I'm Ohio State, I'm trying to find that matchup on how I can exploit him to then open up Jeremiah Smith, because you can't just try and get Jeremiah Smith the long ball going, because they're going to try and take that away immediately. So if you want to take that away, that's fine. I'm going to hit you underneath with Emeka Egbuka, and then when you start to come forward and try to take that away, then I get my one-on-one opportunity. I get my deep shots to Jeremiah Smith and let him go Julio Jones you down the field. But Keith, Dillon Gabriel, what does this game mean for the draft stock of Dillon Gabriel, in your opinion?
Yeah, a whole lot. And I will say this, obviously he was a Heisman finalist, right? But there wasn't inconsistencies is not the right word. Like, it's been highs and lows, but it hasn't been consistent highs, right? Like, there've been some games where he's been okay. And I look at the two biggest games that they've had on their schedule thus far, right? It's the Ohio State game that we're talking about, and then the Penn State game in the Big Ten championship. And the reason I'm saying is that they gave up 31 to Ohio State and another, I think 37 it was to Penn State. Yeah, 37 points. So I think Dillon's gonna have to play well, because it seems though when they go against the better offenses, better teams, period, they score. They score on this Oregon defense. And so he has to have a good game, right? No turnovers, and he's gonna be able to have to push the ball down the field, find these wide receivers, and they're gonna have to put up 35 plus points, I feel like, in this football game. So for Dillon Gabriel, I think it's going to show the next level of like, hey, I can be a guy that can be a quarterback in the NFL that can throw 250 to 300 yards in the NFL, right? He can, I think, help remove the game manager label on him and say that this guy can be a true playmaker.
No, 100%. I mean, against Ohio State, the first game, 23 of 34, 341 yards passing. He averaged 10 yards per attempt and 2 passing touchdowns. And you had like both his top receivers, they both made big plays. Evan Stewart had his best game of the season against Ohio State for 7 and 149. Tez Johnson was 7 for 75 and a touchdown. And also, they got the tight end Terrence Ferguson, who's probably going to be a top of the day 3 type of pick. You know what I mean? I look at Dillon Gabriel and I say, you got to go out here and just handle business. But Keith, I want to go to the trenches real quick. Man, Josh Connolly, like we talked highly of him after that Penn State game and how he played so well against Abdul Carter. You're going up against a different style Big Ten rushers that you've seen already, but they're just different styles. And Jack Sawyer and JC Tuimoloau, these are guys who are more physical, more power rushers than speed, dip, bend, explosiveness off the ball. And if he's able, I think this is where you showcase the full gamut. Against Abdul Carter, you handle the speed, the bend, the elusiveness, all that stuff. If you can then counter and shut down the power, the speed, the power rushes of a JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, if they do flip sides, that is what's going to show that you can handle every style rusher, whether it's a speed rusher, a speed to power rusher, those guys who want to win the, hey, I'm going to just bully ball you through your chest plate. If he can lock those two guys down and win those matchups and don't give up anything, I think he's going to solidify himself as a top 20 pick and a first-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft.
Yeah, I agree with that. When you combine Penn State performance, right, then you the second go round with Ohio State. That's all resume games, right? Against some of the better edge rushers that they have to offer. And I'm looking at it now. I believe they played a couple other teams that have decent edge rushers too, right? So just running the gamut when they played Michigan, right? Like you have a couple guys over there too, and being able to handle it. So he has at this point, playing Ohio State again could potentially be 4 really good resume games for him. But DP, let's keep this thing going. Let's keep this thing flowing, man. Coming up next, we're going to talk about defensive prospects to watch, right? We're flipping sides of the football, going through those defensive guys that you should definitely have your eyes on in this Ohio State versus Oregon matchup.
The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Guys, again, that's $250 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. Why? Because it's thrilling. And again, you can bet on all the same things as well. Who will score a touchdown? Who will score more points as a team? And so much more. To get in on the action, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com to join today for your chance at $250 back in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Defensive prospects to watch: Oregon versus Ohio State Part 2. Keith, I'm going to shine that spotlight back on the Buckeye, Denzel Burke. In that first matchup, like, you were playing good ball up into that game, and it felt like the floor fell through. And just everything went wrong. Like, no matter if it was against Tez or Evan Stewart. And for him being able to go into this game, Keith, and redeem himself. This is how you redeem your draft stock. Because everybody points to that game where you played the best receivers arguably in your conference and you didn't play well. Right? It's like, well, you play Iowa guys or Michigan guys. Well, those guys aren't high-level draft picks. When you played the high-level draft picks, you didn't fare well. This is an opportunity for him to just get back on the horse and say, listen, I'm good. That was a blip. It wasn't a trend. And I'm going to come out here and lock these guys down. For him and David Igbinosun, for both of those guys, being able to just lock down that match. We talk about Dillon Gabriel, Keith. If they can lock down those receivers early in the reps and allow your pass rush time to get back there, it's going to help you out. It's going to help out the entire defense, because when you can not just the edge rushers, you got Tyleik Williams, you got Ty Hamilton on the interior. When you can close the wall on the Dillon Gabriel, right? Like Denzel Burke, David Igbinosun, those guys got the ball out. They got to lock these two receivers down and force him into those tight window man-to-man throws, and not, hey, my guy's got 2 steps on the outside going vertical, I could just hit him in stride. No, make these throws as difficult as possible.
Yeah, DP. And I'll say for those Oregon wide receivers, we didn't even mention them in the offensive prospects to watch, right? Yeah. But Evan Stewart, Tez Johnson, to go further to your point with those Ohio State corners, both of those wide receivers, they had almost resume games against Ohio State. DP, I watched the matchup, Ohio State versus Oregon, the in-season one, in preparation for this podcast, and there was a lot of oohs by me. I was like, ooh, that's a good catch. Ooh, that's a good route, right? And that's the thing, DP. So they definitely have to step up, because those two guys are playmakers at the end of the day. They're gonna make plays on the football. They're gonna do what they have to do. So I definitely agree with you. I'm looking at corner Jabbar Muhammad for Oregon, right? And we talked about him earlier. I forgot. I think your comp was Mike Hilton. I believe for him.
Mike Hilton, Kenny Moore from the
Yeah, Kenny
Colts.
Moore. I talked a little Trent McDuffie, right? I'm looking for him to make some plays in his passing game. Obviously, you have two really good wide receivers. You got the freshman Jeremiah Smith, your second time going against him. You have Emeka Egbuka, guys who offer you different things, different palettes, right? Force force Will Howard to make a mistake, right? Let him try you and then make him pay for trying you
Mhm.
at the end of the day, because you feel like these type of games are going to come to turnovers, right? Like who won the turnover battle when you have highly um talented, evenly matched up situations like this, it's going to come up to the details and the details of turnover. So I look at Jabbar Muhammad as a key factor in this game because he's Oregon's best defensive back. Ohio State's going to want to feed the ball. They feel explosive, right, coming off of the win against Tennessee. So it's like, what are they going to be able to do? And I think they're going to try Jabbar because they're going to look at simple the height situation, right? They're like, okay,
Yeah.
Jabbar is 5'9" ish. Jeremiah Smith is 6 foot plus. Emeka is 6 foot plus. So I think they're going to give those wide receivers some opportunities. Jabbar has to step up.
No, 100%, right? Like, and he had a big pass breakup in that game late in the fourth quarter where they did try to go at him and he was able to make them pay for it, right? And I think when I look at it as well, Keith, go to that, to me, that situation of which, like you said, is turnovers and which quarterback can you make uncomfortable in the secondary with your secondary play and with the front seven and with the front line for Oregon. I look at Derek Harmon, man. You know what I mean? I think Derek Harmon, it's a big opportunity for him to go out here and just play high level football, because I think Donovan Jackson's been, ever since the whole Josh Simmons injury, I think Donovan Jackson been playing more left tackle than guard, which is where he mostly played his whole career. You
Yep.
love the versatility he's shown, but if he's not playing guard, and I think they would, and then they lost Seth McLaughlin, the center, who transferred from Alabama, who's playing really good ball this season. Play his 2024 tape is like almost light years better than what he did in 2023 at Bama. He didn't have the snap issues and stuff like that. He was just playing high level football. And losing him and Josh Simmons, now you move Donovan Jackson to left tackle. You move, I think they brought some young guys off the bench to play center and play guard. If I'm Derek Harmon, I'm licking my chops, man. Like I'm with the Birdman hand rub. I'm like, yeah, like I should dominate this matchup and get into the backfield rep after rep. You know what I mean? Against Penn State, he had moments, but Sam Warmly did a good job neutralizing him at times. No, like dominate this matchup. Like, because there's a lot of buzz for him as a back into the first round interior defensive lineman, like back in the first top of the second. Prove those people who view you that high, prove them right. Like, he's a good player. So now in this situation, just do what you're supposed to do, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, some people are like, well, they're backups. That's cool. Do what you're supposed to do. Dominate those backups, those guys who shouldn't move you in the run game, those guys who shouldn't be able to move with you in the passing game. Get in the backfield, move Will Howard off his spot, make him uncomfortable. But first, stop the run. Stop Travion Henderson. Stop Quinshon Judkins like you did early in that game after Josh Simmons got hurt. And if you guys could do that and make Will Howard throw it on true drop back sets, that allows Mateo Uyunglele to get back there, and he looks like a top 10 pick for 2026 the way he's played this year. You know what I mean? If Jordan Burch is back to full health, like, they have a defensive line, but also on that D line, creating run lanes and paths for Jeffrey Bassa, the linebacker. You know what I mean? Converted safety into linebacker, athletic young man, instinctive, competitive. He can cover. He drop off in the coverage. He can blitz through the A gap. Allow him to just roam and play cleanup. You know what I mean? Don't allow those interior offensive linemen to get past you, duo and climb and get to the second level, create running lanes. And now you got Travion Henderson, who's probably a 4.4 athlete, getting into the 15, 20-yard range, running full head of speed at your safeties. No, stop that. Allow your linebackers to play sound football and to be able to clean up some of the action.
Yeah, DP, I'm going to wrap this up with one other guy. And that's a guy that's been around the draft community for a while, right? He might have some draft fatigue, and that's Lathan Ransom. And I want to give a shout out to our guy Daniel Harms. who brought him to my attention, right? He had a report to write on him, scouting report, and we talked about it in one of our staff meetings, and he was like, hey, Lathan was playing some really good football, right? So I went back and I watched the Tennessee game, and I watched a couple other games during the season. Lathan looks more like the 2023 version of himself, where people talked about him being a second, third round pick, right? Versus the 2023 version, 2024. 2020, he looks like the 2022 version of himself and not the 2023. I'm getting these years mixed up, DP. We on to the new years, right? I'm already in 2025. But yeah, and I just want to give a shout out to Daniel on that. But watched him, evaluated him. He looks good, DP. He looks like a guy that can be a top 100 football player, and I think he can make a difference, right? We talk about Dillon throwing over the middle of the field, right? And some of those end breakers by Evan Stewart, Tez Johnson, is he able to break those things up? And then also just playing man-to-man in the slot, right? Like, can you cover those slot fades, things like that? I'm interested to see if Lathan Ransom the second time around can make some big-time plays. But DP, let's go on to the X factor prospects, right? The guys who are going to be the difference makers in this game. We're going to talk about those coming up next.
It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where Prize Picks come in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns, and for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, and whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or want to cash out quickly, Prize Picks has got you covered. And with over 10 million members and billions in winning, it's clear that people are loving this platform. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Guys, it's very simple. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our every day is X Factor prospects to watch. Oregon versus Ohio State Part 2. Keith, I go to the running back position for Oregon, Jordan James. I think he's going to play a big role. And I think we talked about this, early in the season. When Oregon was trying to find themselves, like I said, they were trying to run the offense solely, felt like they were trying to run it solely through Dillon Gabriel. Like, I don't think Dillon Gabriel was like, he was new to the situation, new to the team, new to the offense. So, yeah, let's get him settled in first. And once they started really getting Jordan James going against Ohio State the first time, he carried the ball 23 times, 115 yards on the ground, averaged 5 yards per rush, and he had a rushing touchdown in that game. And they hit him with a mixture of zone and gap scheme runs when he was in the game. So it kept them on their heels. They never knew which run style was coming. Is he just a zone guy that we can clog the back end, force him to kick it outside, and we can make him go east and west? Or is he just a north and south guy who doesn't have the ability to work back outside? He was able to do both. And if for Oregon's offense, that allowed the RPO game, the play action game, it changed some of the numbers in the box. This guy is the X factor for Oregon. You got to get Jordan James going. I think you get him going early, man. Like, you know what I mean? To be able to run the ball as well as they did with him. Like, Ohio State's defensive line is good. Like, their front seven is good, man. Like, to be able to run the ball the way they were able to was impressive. Now, can you do it again? Right? They went back and watched the tape on that matchup this past week or so. You know what I mean? Or this past week or whatever, since that Tennessee win. They watched the tape and they're like, yeah, let's see what we did wrong. Let's fix it. So if I'm Oregon, let's get Jordan James going, get him going early. I think he is offensively their biggest X factor, because if they get him going, it's going to open up that passing game even more.
Yeah, I like that, DP. I like Jordan James, and I actually just finished wrapping up watching him right for a final eval. And good football player, right? And I don't know if you feel the same, but he seems like a guy that would do good in almost like a outside zone type offense. Because I got like a sprinter type vibe. He's an explosive player, right? That if you give him one crease and he can make one cut and get upfield, cut against the grain and the Florida defense, I think he's a guy that can break big time runs. I just kept thinking about like the San Francisco 49ers, the Miami Dolphins, right? Even potentially the Los Angeles Rams can use somebody like this in their rotation. Explosive player, but he also runs with physicality. He's not a finesse back. Like when you tell him, hey, lower your pads, lower your helmet, and just run through a defender, he's gonna attempt to do it. DP, my X factor guys has to be the Oregon duo, the wide receivers, Evan Stewart, and I believe Tez Johnson is playing also. I know he was injured at some point. But I'm going with this because looking at Evan Stewart and focusing solely on him and their matchup, DP, talked about it. He went 7 catches for 149 yards. And listen, there's one thing to make catches, right? To have to make plays, but it's how you do it too. And I think he did it in a dominant way at the end of the day, right? Like when you watched him, he was like, oh man, like he is giving it to the defensive back at the end of the day. So I'm looking at Evan Stewart and I'm saying, hey, he can come through and make some plays. And then I'm looking at Tez Johnson, right? And I talked about him obviously returning from the injury that he had when he played Penn State. He went 11 catches for 181 yards. You have to ask yourself, hey, this could be a small frame guy, but does he play bigger than what his frame says, right? Like, and are these two really dynamic wide receivers that we're not talking about that probably should be pushed up towards the top of the NFL draft? And then also Dillon Gabriel, he gives them opportunities to make plays. And that's what I like, right? Like he don't mind throwing the one-on-one 50-50 balls, back shoulder throws, things like that. And I'm looking for these guys to come down with the football because I think as important as Jordan James is, the balance is going to be Dillon Gabriel giving them an opportunity and then them making plays down the field.
No, 100%. You got to get those two guys going because they really changed the game for Oregon. They changed the game when you get those explosive plays down the field like that. That was everything they needed to pair with that run game. I'm gonna flip to Ohio State, Keith, on the defensive side of the ball. We talk about their edge rushers, their defensive line. Sonny Styles, 6'4", 235-pound, outstanding athlete. Playing the linebacker position, it's almost like similar to Jeffrey Bossa. Jeffrey Bossa, I think 2 years ago, was playing safety. Last year, Sonny Styles was playing safety. He played in the slot. He had over 150 snaps in the slot, 160 snaps at free safety. Now he's playing solely in the box for the most part for this Ohio State defense. And this is a guy that can cover well. So you're talking about being able to drop off in coverage. Talk about Terrence Ferguson, the tight end for Oregon. This is a guy that can match up with him, kind of take him away underneath, right? Or play over the top, trigger downhill with his twitch, his explosiveness, his speed. They're going to need that second level of that defense to make plays. Him and Cody Simon, they're going to need – Ohio State needs those guys to make plays, whether it's, hey, Jordan James, prevent him from breaking, like you said, being explosive, breaking those big runs, keep him 2-3 yards, and that's it, like dead those plays. But also when it is 3rd and 7, maybe I don't blitz you, but if I drop you off in coverage, be that big time playmaker, that big body playmaker. Again, I think for me, when I look at him, he reminds me physically, just looking at his body type, he reminds me of Isaiah Simmons, but he's learning to play just full-time linebacker because they said, hey, we're going to play you as a linebacker. We're not going to play you as an edge, a D tackle, a safety in the corner like Clemson did with Simmons that kind of derailed his development. Ohio State's letting him develop at linebacker, man. I think he could be a big-time playmaker and X factor for that defense because if the defensive line does their job against the run and even in the passing game and speed up a Dillon Gabriel, this is a guy in the middle of the field. If Dillon Gabriel doesn't see him, he can not only make plays like just in coverage in general, like making big hits, separating ball from body. But if you don't pay attention, he can make plays on the football. And then he's the type of athlete, if he gets a hold of it, he gets a brigade, a couple guys in front of him. He's got the speed to take it the distance. So they got to keep an eye on Sonny Styles. Like I said, 6'4", 235, number 6 linebacker. He's my biggest X factor for that defense. The corners, the D-line got to do their job. He's the guy that I think that if he plays at a high level, he can flip this game on his head just by his ability to stop the run and also be a really good pass defender.
Yeah, DP, I like that. I think this is your second time talking about him too, right? So if you didn't pay attention to him the first time, definitely pay attention to him in this matchup because I think he will. I agree with you. Definitely gonna be a difference maker. We're talking about in the run game and the pass game. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at the Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout for being our every days. On tomorrow's episode, guys, we're going to break down the Notre Dame versus Georgia matchup. Does Riley Leonard have it in the bag to elevate his stock and knock off those Bulldogs? We're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.